Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. In the past few years, the world has witnessed changes in social consciousness whose sudden development the ruling scientific paradigm has not been able to explain, or perhaps more accurately, has had no interest in explaining. According to scientist and philosopher Johan Calleman, however, these changes correspond with the activation of new waves of creation emanating from the center of the universe that influence human thinking. From the Big Bang to the present, says Calleman, these waves guide the evolution of the universe, and through their holographic resonance with the human mind, they profoundly shape revolutions in religion, technology, economy, and social consciousness. Johan Calleman is a scientist and philosopher with a PhD in physical biology from the University of Stockholm. Recognized for his theory that the Mayan Calendar reflects the evolution of the global mind, he's the author of several books, including The Global Mind and the Rise of Civilization, and his newest work, The 9 Waves of Creation, Quantum Physics, Holographic Evolution, and the Destiny of Humanity, which explains why our world is so different than it was just a few years ago, why time is speeding up, and the role that we each can play in manifesting the destiny of humanity. Johan Calleman, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sandy. Looking forward to this discussion.
Me too. Carl, your background is in the hard sciences, so what sparked your interest in the Mayan calendar?
Well, I guess, if I look upon it retrospectively, I feel I was born with this Mayan calendar mission, really. But being raised in Sweden and having my education and initial scientific career there, something had to trigger this real, what I consider my own real mission in life. And what happened to be the trigger was when I, at the age of 29, I felt called. I saw an advertisement at the university where I was working at the time, telling you that I could go to Mexico and I could learn a little bit of Spanish, and that I felt called to go there. I couldn't hardly resist it, and I then went there. In the month of October, I landed, unbeknownst to myself, I landed in the Mexico City airport on the Day of the Dead, and which was quite some shocking experience, you might say. In other words, I came there from a fairly rational country to meeting all these skeletons hanging from the light poles and all the the bread that people were eating with skulls, and they've had these gatherings with their families at the cemeteries and so forth. It was quite an amazing thing.
Culture shock, yeah.
Culture shock, you might say, but at the same time, I really felt very connected to the Mexican people, and which is very colorful culture, so to speak, very alive culture, and then I. At some point, I took a third-class train from Mexico City down to Merida, and it just felt like the closer I came down to this region where the Maya used to live, the more connected I felt to the people, and I just, and then I also came to visit some of the ruins or what we call ruins today. I went to Chichen Itza, which at that time wasn't like today. Today there are 2.5 million visitors per year. At that time, I was able to sneak in at the archaeological site in the middle of the night. I know I wasn't supposed to do that, but I could sort of be there and watch through what is called the observatory in Chichen Itza and see how light from certain stars would come in certain openings in the building, and it was just a very fascinating thing. And and I also became familiar with the fact that they had a calendar very much unlike our own, and when I came back to Sweden from that, and again took up my laboratory work, I still felt that I had really been exposed to what was my true purpose in life. And then, it's really just a matter, are you going to be true to that purpose or not? Because usually there will be a cost for it, of course. Life became more uncertain when I eventually abandoned my previous career in maybe 13 years after I originally visited Chichen Itza. But at that point, I took the chance, you might say, to simply devote myself fully to understanding what the Mayan calendar means, and primarily to understand it in such a way that it becomes meaningful for what I would say modern people.
Yes.
So that's what I've been doing ever since. I listened to a calling, and then, of course, in retrospect, I've sort of seen in my Mayan chart and things like that there are things that indicate that, yes, I have some kind of a metaphysical Mayan background, if you like.
That's a lovely story, and I know through your research, so many people understand the Mayan calendar a great deal more than... and it's not something to dismiss, I mean, when one really reads about it. But tell me about your new book, because The 9 Waves of Creation. Now, it shows how throughout history, each revolution in human consciousness has been driven by these 9 waves. So what are the 9 waves of creation? And could you, very briefly, just give us a very quick rundown of each of those waves? Well,
it is connected to the recent data that the beginning of the universe really is an activation of what the ancient peoples would talk about as the tree of life. And this is an idea or a concept or whatever you want to call it that not only the Maya embraced. You find it in the Bible, in the first book of the Bible, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and so forth. And in my own original culture in Scandinavia, the Vikings had this huge ash called Yggdrasil, which was bigger than the entire universe. And since then, I've traveled and seen different cultures and met with different indigenous representatives, and they will tell me almost always that as part of their culture, there is an idea that there is a tree of life. And now, the tree of life is not just a static thing, though. It is something that interacts with people. And we have the classical example that most people probably are familiar with, which is the biblical example of the tree of life, where there is a serpent coming out of the tree. And a serpent is also a very, very powerful ancient symbol that is used in many contexts. In the Amazon, people talk about the great anaconda, which has created the human beings. And if you go to Australia, there is the rainbow serpent, which is a creator god, like it is to the Bushmen, the San people in Southern Africa, who may be and probably are the oldest, what should I say, intact, or to some extent intact culture of our planet, also had an idea way back in time that the Creator God was a serpent. But the serpent then, if we are to translate that to modern terminology, what people would experience in ancient times as a serpent would be what I say is a wave, a sine wave. And it is sort of a wave that underlies our reality and in significant regards creates our experience of this reality. And so the tree of life, which is the original geometric structure in the center of the universe, is also then sending out, broadcasting waves that are creating ourselves, and that is as far as I think you can really get through making comparison with ancient civilization, with the ancient cultures. But what the Maya have done and made it possible to sort of really translate this to a relevant worldview for modern people is that they develop calendars to chart the wave movements of these waves. And they would explicitly say that these waves emanated from the tree of life.
Carl, I'm going to have to just hold you there because we are going to a break shortly. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with scientist and philosopher Carl Johan Calleman about his new book, The 9 Waves of Creation. Coming up after the break, a new theory about the Big Bang and the organization of the universe. We'll be back in a few moments. Stay tuned.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
America's service members and veterans are strong, forged out of bravery, sacrifice, and duty. Sometimes reaching out for help can be the most challenging and worthwhile mission of all. When you recognize something isn't right, make the call to the Veterans Crisis Line or Military Crisis Line. Dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1.
Welcome back. Carl Calleman, before the break, you were telling us about the tree of life, which you explain in your book. Is the tree of life is not a thing made of matter. Rather, it is the geometric source of the space-time through which the matter of the universe is organized. Can you explain that a bit for me?
Well, I wish I could. I can say a little bit more about it, though, that it really comes down to the whole new perception that science is presenting of what has been called the Big Bang, which is really a name that has been used for the beginning of the universe, the birth of the universe. And for, maybe 50 years or so, this is a theory that has dominated cosmology in academic world. And really, the predominant view has been that there was just an explosion that sort of happened for no reason, and since that explosion, the universe has just by a series of accidents come to turn out the way that it does today, the one that we're living in at this time. And that's sort of been almost like the official creation story of our own time, at least among people that are not completely connected to some particular religion. Now, in the past 10 years, this whole view has really changed, because new data has come forth saying that it wasn't just an explosion. What science has discovered is that from the very earliest time we can go back to, almost from this initial starting point, there is an axis in the universe. And it's not an axis in the sense of an axis made of matter, but there is a straight line that it seems that in the entire universe is organized around. And this then is really what I think is what the ancients would talk about as the tree of life. And in a sense, it's always been this dilemma. There was nothing, and then there was something. And that's really, on one level, there is never anything. Everything is just sort of perceptions that we have from waves and from geometries that are being broadcast throughout the universe, and that is creating the universe. And at the deepest level, I believe the universe, it was just a sea of energy that at a certain point in time, and then this geometry awakens. This geometry of a straight line that pervades the universe is awakened, which is really consistent with some ancient creation stories, that the Creator activated the tree of life at this point. But the tree of life is a geometry that creates forms all over the universe, and that includes ourselves. We are really, as the ancients would say, we are created in the image of the tree of life, and the way it seems to work, is that the tree of life creates broadcast waves that create vibrations all over the universe, and each one of us is an embodiment of these particular vibrations. So that's how I would like to.
And the nine waves, which have come at different times, they bring about revolutions in the evolution of us and all other life. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I would say that all life, everything in the universe, and including then all life and the evolution of all life in the universe, is created by these particular waves. And in this way, there's really no conflict between the idea of creation and evolution, which has been ever since Darwin, and that's a conflict that has been a common topic of discussion. In this way, evolution is just another word for creation, and vice versa. And what makes these waves, these 9 waves that the Maya charted as a calendar system so very interesting is when you start to connect the various shift points in the waves. Like a wave has its peaks and its valleys, and a sine wave then will go through certain phase shifts between peaks and valleys. And when you start looking at the evolution of anything in this universe, but especially if you look at the biological evolution and later on also the mental and technological and spiritual evolution and so forth, you find that the major points of transformation in this evolution conforms to these phase shifts, to these shifts in the wave movement that the Mayan calendar described. And it does so with a tremendous accuracy, I would say. And what this tells us is that we're all part of a sort of a predetermined plan emanating an intelligent plan that sort of developed through 9 different levels, that each has its each wave, each level has its particular purpose and creates a certain aspect of the universe. But you know what this means, in my view, is that we're part of a divine plan, or at least what this book evidences is that we're part of a plan emanating from a tree of life, manifesting through waves. And this plan is essentially unknown to people, and I think it's something that really people would need to know, because it really tells us very much about where we're coming from. I would say what we're here to do and where the world is going. The bulk of this book is to provide this kind of evidence to correlate shifts in the waves with what we know happened in the past of the history of the universe.
So the first wave lasted more than 2 billion years, and then each wave got progressively shorter. Why is that?
Well, the waves get shorter. They are sequentially activated. The first wave was the only wave that was active for a very long time, and then about 800 million years ago, the second wave was activated, and then about 40 million years ago, the third wave was activated up until the year 2011, when the ninth wave was activated, which completes this whole sequential activation of the 9 waves. So as of that year, which is only 5 years into the past, for the first time in human history, all 9 waves are active and up there running in parallel and continuing to create the universe according to this overall scheme. But what is also part of this sequential activation of waves is that each wave has a frequency. It develops with the waves, the peaks and the valleys have certain durations. And as you climb to higher levels, because this is like a pyramidal scheme, if you want to use that word, because I'm using it because the Maya would build, and other peoples as well, would build pyramids in 9 levels that were symbolizing how 9 different levels of creation were built upon on top of each other. And as we climb to the highest level, the frequency of these waves are increasing. And there's been a tremendous frequency increase over the, it's been most marked in the past, maybe in our lifetime, I would say. And this is something that a lot of people have experienced in the sense that there's been a common experience that time has been speeding up. We know how tremendously much change has happened, for instance, in the digital arena, only in the past 10 years or something like that. More change may have happened in those 10 years than previously happened in 100 years or even more. And it has to do with the fact that this is the digital revolution and all the kind of changes that brings into human communications and human technology is brought by a wave with a very high frequency. So change comes very, very quickly with that particular creation wave. So we have now come to the ninth wave, and which I believe is then, not only believe, I know this is the wave that has the highest frequency of all of them, and that is the reason that we're today living in a world where change is very, very, very rapid.
I think I read somewhere in your book that, technology seems to be, the advances seem to be doubling and quadrupling, quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with scientist and philosopher Johan Calleman about his theory that the Mayan calendar not only reveals an underlying time plan for the evolution of the universe, but also reflects the evolution of the global mind. Still to come, why understanding the holographic universe is a critical factor for the outcome for us and for humanity at large.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
We don't want your teddy bears. We don't want your shoes. We don't want your pencils, books, or blankets. We want to go home.
Around the world, 95% of children in orphanages have living parents, but poor and vulnerable families are often forced to give up children they love. Children need the love of a family. Orphanages are the problem, not the solution. Disability Rights International helps families around the world keep their children at home. Learn how you can help at drikids.org.
Welcome back. Carl Calleman, 2011, you say, was the big game changer. We all think of that as the shift. That's when the ninth wave was activated. And you talk about it being the highest frequency, bringing that frequency with it. And yet, It's also brought massive upheaval, movements from the East, ISIL, the disintegration of nation-states, and the decline of the West. So what is that all about?
Well, I would say that those phenomena that you enumerate there and that I discuss in I think in chapter 8 in my book, they're not really the results of the ninth wave. But what happened was that in the year 2011, there was a shift that happened in all the different waves. And when the shift happens, many people would have expected some kind of most people would say it was in 2012, I would say 2011. But regardless of that, the point is that most people think that it would have been a sweeping change that somehow would affect everybody in the same way. Some people expected some very negative, even end of the world scenario, whereas other people had a very positive view of the upcoming shift, thinking that it would be, some sort of mystical boom where everything would just sort of solve itself for the better. But what I think this book adds to this understanding is the fact that there are several different waves in operation, and depending on what wave a particular individual is in resonance with, or a particular culture is in resonance with, it will have different kind of outcomes. So this is the reason that the world after the shift has a very it's a very mixed bag of changes that has taken place. And so on the one hand we have people that are experiencing directly this transition into a kind of unity consciousness, which the ninth wave was a carrier of. And this unity consciousness means seeing the connection of all things and taking down the boundaries between ourselves and others, and between ourselves and the divine, and between ourselves and nature, and so forth. So that's one group of people. But there's a completely other group of people, you might say, and this is very predominant in the Middle East, where you've seen a reversal to very barbaric forms of being that is connected to the fact that another wave, the sixth wave, made a phase shift and went into a night. And so the point is to realize that there was no sweeping change, and there really shouldn't have been a reason to expect it, and that depending on which one of these 9 levels a given person would be, they would undergo a transition that was appropriate for that particular level. And so that's my explanation to why the shift has been so multifaceted and has affected people quite differently in different parts of the world.
You say that ultimately what the world seems to be going toward may best be described as divinely guided anarchy, which is a fabulous phrase. And a part of that is that many people are reacting in different ways, especially those that want to go back to the old paradigm. So is that exactly what is happening with the East, with the Middle East? It's I think we see it also in the revival of quite I would have thought quite outdated forms of nationalism that we see in the Western world at the current time.
that's really an expression of a desire to go back to the nation state and so forth. And I'm convinced that the ninth wave ultimately will bring the world to a kind of global unity, which doesn't divide between groups of people or nations or so forth. But the ninth wave has only been active for 5 years, and the sixth wave, which is the one that really has created all the duality of humanity, has existed for 5,000 years. So it's a tremendous difference in how long the people have been immersed in these particular waves, and it will take some time until this divinely guided anarchy will be the way of being for our planet. But I think that is really ultimately what's the design plan of the universe or for our planet is all about. And you might even talk about that as a golden age. But it won't happen immediately. It won't happen automatically. It will only happen against the resistance of many people that sort of rather would go back to what I would call the lower levels of the pyramid with the dualistic frames of consciousness guiding their lives. And but over time, this is people always seek the wave that has the highest frequency. It just takes some time until people really see the value of the highest frequency, and we're in the beginning of such a change.
Is this why you say that it is really critical that we understand the holographic universe?
Yes, it is. I think many people think that that what happens on our planet is kind of a pretty much random, and it's just or it just depends on who the human individuals are who make certain discoveries or take certain political positions and so forth. And what we see through this particular perspective of a holographic universe is that evolution is not random at all. It does have an overriding direction, and that is defined by the highest of the nine waves. That's really where things are going. And so I really recommend this, that people are studying this direction of the holographic universe and how the holographic universe is designed, because it's a certain way of at least seeing the meaning of your individual life as part of this. I might... people with a spiritual orientation, they will often, say when things are happening in their lives, they may want to manifest something, and then either it happens, in which case they will say that, well, it was meant to happen, or it doesn't manifest, and then they will say, well, it wasn't meant to happen. But the question then comes up, and I'm not disputing that. That's exactly how I look upon things myself. But then the question comes, where does that meaning come from? What is it that defines whether something is meant to happen or not meant to happen? Well, I think that can only exist in a universe that evolves forward according to certain mechanisms. And what I have elucidated in this book is that these mechanisms are really waves, creation waves that exist in an underlying quantum field, a field that underlies our existence and underlies all the desires that we may have and everything we may want to manifest or not. And it's that underlying quantum field that defines in the final analysis what happens, whether something is meant to happen or not meant to happen. Now, this book then it deals with what is meant to happen on the larger scale, what happens in terms of civilizational changes. It doesn't necessarily go into the individuals, what is meant to happen in the individual life or not meant to happen. But I would say that the reason that even our individual lives have a meaning in that sense is just that we are part of a meaningful plan and a meaningful quantum field of waves that direct the evolution of the universe, and that's something that I think is critical for people to know if they are going to understand the kind of processes that the world is going through, especially at the current time.
So here we are at this kind of crossroads, I guess, with the ninth wave in its early days, still being impacted by other waves, and polarization taking place with, divinely orchestrated anarchy taking place, systems falling down and breaking, and at the same time, this incredible raising of consciousness that we're seeing. When we come back after the next break, I'd love for you to tell us what you see happening in the coming months. So we'll be back in a few moments with Johan Calleman, and we're talking about his new book, The 9 Waves of Creation. Still to come, the destiny of humanity and what we can consciously do to align ourselves with the 9th wave. Stay tuned.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Spiritual, metaphysical, green living, psychic, alternative healing, life coaching. Do any of these or similar terms apply to your business or cause? If so, you are in a niche market with a very specific audience. Conscious Gate PR is the world's leading conscious public relations agency. With a global reach of over 4 million and growing, we offer comprehensive media campaigns to our targeted market. Learn more at ConsciousGatesPR.com. Conscious marketing for conscious minds.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility. It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Welcome back. Carl, what is the destiny of humanity that the ancient texts hinted at?
Well, there are ancient texts that, you have the Book of Revelation, which is what is it? It's almost 2,000 years old. which talks about this new world being born. You have the Jewish tradition saying that there will be a return to the Garden of Eden. And what these, this may be difficult to understand what that means, but both of those are really connected to the tree of life. And ultimately everyone will have a part in the tree of life in these ancient descriptions, or religious, I would say. In ancient, if you go to like ancient Chinese, ancient Vedic, ancient Mayan traditions, you will find that there is a sort of a build-up. There are descriptions in those traditions that point to some time when sort of the everything is ready, when all the waves are at hand, you might say. The number 9 in so many traditions is pointing to a completion, and this I believe is really what is manifesting at this point in time. But when I look upon this idea, which all the major Abrahamic religions adhere to, the idea of a return to the Garden of Eden, I think this is a metaphor that makes sense if you look upon it in the framework of these different waves and the different polarities of the mind that these different waves are creating. Because if you look at humanity for the past 100,000 years or so, in this context, you would see that it's all about an evolution from unity, going through separations, and then back to unity, and back to unity with the divine, I would say. But it's really that there's been a time in the past that you may talk about as a Garden of Eden, in the sense that people did not know, people did not yet have minds that would separate them from nature or from each other, or separate the genders, or separate the different classes of people and so forth. And what the return to the Garden of Eden would mean would be that we would again be endowed with minds that do not separate us, and yet we've gone through this civilizational development that has made us aware of our own place in creation, who we are, and as well as all the important technology that we've gained through going through this process of changing mind, creating different kinds of technology, and so forth. And so when I relate to this idea of a return to the Garden of Eden, I don't mean that people should go back to live in caves. What I understand this to mean is that it's a return to a mind that doesn't separate, or you might, to use another term, it's about raising the consciousness to remove the boundaries that limit ourselves, and raising our consciousness to see that everything is connected, and so forth. And in that idea of that kind of a return to unity, I think that there are several ancient traditions that would support such an understanding.
When do you believe that will happen?
Well, I think we're talking about a couple of decades into the future. I think it depends on how we as humans act, how much we understand of this, but I think we're talking about a couple of decades.
Do you think that will happen across the board all at once? Because, I mean, there are many people who already have some understanding of this, and likewise there are many, as we're seeing, that seem to have no understanding of this.
Yeah. I don't think it will happen across the board. I think it's a change that it may happen in what should I say, spurts, or in there've been intensified periods where it moves forward towards this more quickly, and other periods less. But I'm almost convinced that it's not something that will just happen overnight. It will be a result, I think, also of our courage many times to follow what we are really guided to do on an inner spiritual level, and that's a crucial factor. And we humans are fallible, and so that's the reason that I don't think, I see no reason actually why it would happen all at once. It's a process where some people will be the courageous examples, and they certainly are courageous examples out there today. And one person that comes to mind is the current Pope, I think, who is really in significant ways leading the way in changing the whole idea of religion and so forth. But he's just one example, and there are it's not something that would just happen overnight.
So when it does happen, when probably the majority of people are there, what happens then? What comes next? Does the process start all over again?
No. I think also that we're never coming, as far as I can see, the world will never come to some kind of a static state. There will always be these shifts that are somehow propelling us to evolve. But the difference is that the overall framework will be that of the ninth wave and a unity consciousness. And so that sets limits to how destructive people can become. And I would think that it's really, from that point, if we are thinking of a time, a couple of decades into the future, when a majority of the people of the planet are truly resonating with the ninth wave, and there is an overall understanding that we're all connected, and only positive actions are serving the future. I think there will be an endless thing to explore in the spiritual realm. I do not see any kind of reason to think that there will be everything will just end because there's nothing more to do or anything more to explore or anything like that. I don't think so. That's not my view.
And what about in the meantime? I mean, here we are seeing this, divinely ordained anarchy happening all around us, political situations completely disintegrating. As you say, the rules are increasingly being broken. What do you see happening in the coming months? Many people have their eyes on Europe, on the American election.
Yeah, well, I think there will be quite difficult times. I could easily see, especially the United States. It depends on the presidential election, but it's not only that. I mean, you can see so many people also in the whole political, within the framework of the United States Constitution, that people are increasingly even elected people are sort of breaking the spirit of the Constitution, breaking the rules, and of course, you have things similar in parallel going on in the United Kingdom with the Brexit vote and the potential dissolution of the United Kingdom that may very well result from that, and similar kind of movements in other European countries, and I could easily see collapse. There are worst case scenarios that are certain to generate a political collapse in major Western countries, and if that happens, it becomes very questionable how the sort of economic structures will be able to hold up. And so I think these couple of months that we're facing now will be momentous and very consequential. The months of October, November, December, January, I would say, and even in the best case scenarios, I think so much has happened that has served to erode the respect for the political systems in these countries that it's very hard to see that it will sort of just go on as it has in the past.
Carl, I'm going to have to interrupt you there, I'm afraid, because we are out of time. I totally agree with you. I think these things need to collapse. It's time for change. It needs to happen. The 9 Waves of Creation, Quantum Physics, Holographic Evolution, and the Destiny of Humanity is available at Amazon and good bookstores. Carl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And for more information about Carl Calleman's work, you can visit his website at www.calleman, CALLEMAN.com. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I hope you'll join me next week for another edition of What is Going On, when I'll be talking to investigative author and Ancient Aliens contributor Nick Redfern about his new book, Bloodline of the Gods. Till then, it's goodbye from me.